Looking for a cosmic adventure like no other? ZATSWAN Multiversal Guardian is a high-stakes comic book journey through the multiverse with stunning art and an unforgettable hero. Get your copy today in ebook and paperback formats. Link in the description.
Hey everybody, this is Neil Allen, the creator of ZATSWAN Multiversal Guardian, a cosmic fantasy graphic novel. Be sure to pick this up on Amazon and leave reviews. The link for that will be in the description. And I just got word that the Amazon Wheel of Time show is canceled. I think it ran 3 seasons and it's done. Honestly, it lasted longer than I expected. I gave the first season a chance. I thought it was horrible. I thought it was a bastardization of Robert Jordan's novels. And I just kind of tuned out from there and just didn't watch it anymore. So here's an interesting tidbit about me and my channel. So Wheel of Time had some pretty controversial casting. You know, it had a lot of black and mixed actors, where you know that the characters were not intended to be depicted that way, so they were essentially race swapped. And believe it or not, to my knowledge, I really think this is true. I was the first person to call foul on that. Yes, take a look at me. I made videos about this because it was like people like Daniel Green, and congratulations to you, Daniel Green. You weren't nearly as big as you are now when you were reporting on this initially, so good on you for your success. A lot of people like Daniel Green, Nabliss, whoever else was reporting on this, it was like there was this elephant in the room they weren't talking about. It's like, hey, look, Nynaeve has been cast. Hey, look, Egwene has been cast. Hey, look, Perrin has been cast. And they're just kind of talking about it. And there's this like big elephant in the room. Well, the thing about me, for anybody who knows me, they know this. I'm like a very straightforward person, right? Like when something's kind of like, there's an elephant in the room, I'm the person who's going to like say something about it. Like I'm not going to just pretend this isn't going on. So I was the one who made a video about, yo, what's up with this casting for Wheel of Time? It's kind of not what you would think of the characters. And then that exploded. Boom. I was the one who like said something that all these other people were thinking. And these videos, I mean, I might restore them. I have since taken them down because, interestingly, I'm not like a culture war person. Like anybody who knows me knows I'm not into that. I'm not about that. And I saw these videos were like really blowing up in popularity for me. There were a lot of people who agreed with what I was saying. There were people who came in who disagreed with what I was saying and were throwing all these, you know, accusations at me just because I wasn't really behind a lot of the casting choices, like these kind of assumptions about me. So these videos were getting very popular. Very fast, like causing a lot of interaction. Algorithm was going crazy. Videos were blowing up. And the thing is, I was getting such such ridiculous comments from detractors in my comment sections that it was easy to make videos about that, like refuting what these people were saying. And this was getting really, really popular. And, you know, basically the road was paved for me. The road was paved for me to be one of these these kind of outrage merchants preaching against woke stuff. Believe me, like it was there. And I'm on YouTube to like let people know about my comic books. And, you know, if I want people to know me for something, I would want people to know me for like my creative work. Not like being, you know, like one of these outrage type of people. So I saw all of that and I was like, you know what? I'm not going to go down that road. I know a lot of these people don't have any personal integrity and they're going to like hop right on that. We've all seen people like that. But I was like, no, this isn't me. I had an opinion I put my opinion out there, and to this day I still stand by that opinion. I'm not for these race mixed characters that Wheel of Time did, and we'll talk more about that in a minute. I had my opinion. My opinion was out there. If I kept talking about outrage, about the next thing you know, I'm going to be talking about The Little Mermaid, Disney's new Little Mermaid. I'm going to be talking about Snow White. I'm going to be talking about all this stuff. If I wanted to go down that road, it was like total. It was there. It was a clear path, and I thought about all of this. Like, I'm not. That's not me. That's not what I'm into. I'm not one of these grifting, outrage merchants that a lot of like independent comic creators are. And I basically took those videos down. Not that I disagree with them. I still stand by them. Like, I still stand by those opinions. But just because like I didn't want my vision, it's not just my vision of the characters, it's the vision that Robert Jordan had of these characters. Just because I wanted the show to stay, faithful to the original vision of the author that millions of people already knew about before this show, doesn't mean that I agree with all these other, certain ideologies that people were making assumptions of me about. And I didn't want to be associated with like this outrage merchant grifting segment of fantasy and sci-fi and geek culture type of stuff. I didn't want to do that, so I basically just took those videos down and just kind of went on. Not that I'm ashamed of anything I said or anything that I did. It's just that I don't want to take my channel down this road. And so now it turns out that this show's been canceled. I left it alone. Now, how do I feel about that? Interestingly, my feelings on it are mixed. Because, honestly, yeah, there's a part of me that's like, oh, okay, good, that thing's gone. Now, Wheel of Time can stop being... It doesn't exactly work this way, of course, but there's a part of me that feels this way. Wheel of Time can stop being represented by this... thing that probably Robert Jordan probably wouldn't have been too crazy about. So Wheel of Time can just go back to being Wheel of Time, even though obviously that's not totally true. The show's there. It's, even though it's not being produced anymore, it's still there. But then there's another part of me that's like, that's a shame for, the fans of the show and the people who did like it. And, even if the show is there or was there, I could still enjoy Wheel of Time the way that I enjoy Wheel of Time. Like, the show wasn't necessarily stopping me from enjoying Wheel of Time the way that I enjoy Wheel of Time. So it's a bit of a shame that the people who enjoyed Wheel of Time in that form, that they're not going to be getting any more of that. So there is that part of it. But the show, I thought it was poor from what I saw. I could only speak to the first season because that's as much of a chance I gave that show. And it was bad, and it was not a good representation of the show in a lot of ways. It wasn't just the casting. It's what they did with some of the characters. Like, it seemed like, from what I left off, like Matt was going to be a bad guy, from what I recall. And you know what? Believe it or not, I don't think that, in a sense, creatively, I don't think that's a bad idea. And Robert Jordan probably should have done something like that. You have these three guys, right? And like, they're the main characters. And, the story is somewhat about, there are aspects of it like going to the dark side, although in Wheel of Time world they would call it falling to the shadow. And so one of them probably should have done that, just, to keep the narrative fresh. There weren't a lot of big twists and turns in Wheel of Time where there could have been to keep things, interesting. So interestingly, turning Matt bad to me isn't a horrible idea. Although I would have done that to Perrin, like he loses. I probably would have wrote it to where, yes, his wife dies, and we saw how in some of those Wheel of Time books he's so into trying to save his wife. I probably would have wrote the thing to where his wife dies and he goes off the deep end. Plus, Matt going bad. Matt was always kind of the edgiest of the trio. So it's kind of too predictable, I think. Probably would have been better if Perrin did that. But that's just me being kind of geeky about Wheel of Time. So that creative choice I didn't think was horrible. But there were other creative choices that were just like weird. Like, for instance, Matt being a full-on like crook ever since the beginning. That wasn't cool. And yeah, a lot of the casting I thought was, pretty odd. Interestingly, the mixed race Rand al'Thor, I actually think that was a good idea. Now, if you know the Wheel of Time, he comes from the Aiel people, and he's like an Aiel that's in a Two Rivers setting. He's like a displaced Aiel, essentially. Making him apart from the rest of the Two Rivers is a good idea, and that's a cool way to do it, I think. Plus, honestly, the Aiel come from a hot climate. They're like from a desert. It would kind of make sense for those people to be darker, although the way Robert Jordan does it doesn't make a lot of sense. Like, you could kind of think of them being kind of sort of like Irish people, and they're from like the hottest place like in the planet, or one of them. And I actually do know redheads quite intimately, and if you are a redhead, you're kind of traditional sort of redheaded person, or if you know people who are, that, like, man, sun will mess them up real bad. Over the course of 3,000 years, they probably would have adapted differently and not looked like that. So actually, like, making not look like your typical like Irish type of person. So actually, like, making Rand al'Thor like mixed, I thought that was actually a cool thing. I'm fully behind that. Making the other characters like black and mixed that were never depicted that like that in the book, like Nynaeve Almira, Perrin Abara. You had other characters too that didn't really look like their but counterparts, like Egwene. Like, basically none of the main cast except for Moiraine were well cast. And I made videos about that. I'm like, I get why you're doing it for the sake of representation, but for the actual type of person that you're representing here, the type of person you would think would be cheering them, which, I am that person exactly. I was like, I think they went too far with that. Now, the Rand casting I thought was cool. All those other characters, no, that you're kind of defeating the purpose of this. The Two Rivers is this really insular place. Like, when the series starts up, it's this backwater, insular place where it was a big deal for Rand just to have red hair and like gray colored eyes, because everybody else was more or less homogenous. So to have this kind of diverse Two Rivers, that kind of defeated the point, because the character arc, I don't think that's the right word, but the arc for the Two Rivers is it did start to become more diverse over time, like the people from different parts of the world, like Ered Doman and Gieldon and other places, like these are fantasy settings. They started to, like, they were refugees and things, and they started to go into the Two Rivers and start to spread different ideas. And but for it to start off all diverse and no, that kind of, see, it's a good example of ignoring the narrative for the sake of just kind of woke statements, I thought, and that wasn't cool. Anybody who really knows me does know I am for representation in speculative fiction, like fantasy and science fiction. I never would have produced anything like this if I wasn't. However, I'm 9 times out of 10 I am against like race bending characters, because it's kind of a lazy way of doing things. And because I think that people like me, for example, we kind of deserve our own characters, like, say, ZATSWAN right here. We don't really need to be stealing other people's characters, because all that's going to do is kind of put a target. It's just going to make the situation all the more volatile. It's already like a sensitive topic, and I think that's just, it's doing a disservice to everyone on all sides. It's doing a disservice to people like me who want more and better representation. It's doing a disservice to people who are already fans of characters like Nynaeve and Lan and all these people. You know what I mean? So I still stand by what I said about the Wheel of Time casting being bad. I didn't care for it. I'm exactly the type of person that was supposed to be behind that, but I do think that it is a case by case basis. You know, it's a case by case basis, because honestly, I wasn't as turned off by, like, say, House of Valerian and I want to call it The Princess and the Queen, but I know it's not called. Is it called that? House of the Dragon. That's what the Princess and the Queen, or the Blacks and the Greens, is the main way I know that story. Although I know House of the Dragon's adapted from Fire and Blood, but Martin's told that story, I think, maybe at least 3 different ways, and the way I know it is through The Princess and the Queen. But that didn't bother me that much, because I don't know. It's a case by case thing with me, because the Valarians weren't really that. They're not as iconic as the characters like from Wheel of Time. You know, their characters just really aren't. Like, Nynaeve is a really important character. Egwene's a really important character. People have known her since 1990 or something like that. They know Egwene and Nynaeve and Perrin the way they know them. And, you know, that's one of the fun things about Wheel of Time. You come to love those characters, and you love them kind of the way they are. The Rand casting actually, to me, made some sense, you know, for Rand to be mixed, to be kind of different, because that's kind of Rand's deal, and it made sense. So it's okay when it makes sense, but when it doesn't, and you're probably going too far with it, which was what Wheel of Time was doing, I did have a problem with it. So my feelings about Wheel of Time being canceled are kind of mixed. There's a part of me that's like, man, glad that's over. There's another part of me that's like, well, you know, that's a shame for the people who were enjoying it. But let me know, did you follow the Wheel of Time show? What did you think of this? What did you think of all the race bending of all the characters? Or what do you think about race bending in general? Let me know in the comments below, and be sure to pick up ZATSWAN Multiversal Guardian, which features a prominent mixed race character in an interracial relationship working opposite the princess. Not something you see in, like, fantasy and stuff a lot, where, like, a black character or a mixed character or whatever actually ends up with a princess, getting a princess. That turns a lot of the paradigms on its head. You know, there is actually a lot of Wheel of Time type inspiration. Here we have our Luce Theron type of scene with Ilyena. You know, like, they got their Luce Theron from me, I think. You know, if you look at their Luce Theron, I know that's quite a thing to say, but the thing about it was, I was making all those Wheel of Time videos at the time, and they were popular, and I wouldn't be surprised if, like, they saw it. But did they get their Luce Theron from me? I don't know. Kind of a similarity. Who knows? Anyway, pick up the graphic novel and review it if you do. That's always helpful, and I'll talk to all of you again soon. Take care.